And thank you so much for the invitation for us this weekend. Blessing and honor. Thank you, David, elders, ministers, leaders here, to the Bible College, to Mary and her ministry, all the ministries that are represented here. We're blessed and honored to spend this time with you. As was mentioned, we had planned to come back in March of 2020, but something happened during that time, and we weren't able to go. But I got to teach the first online class at the Bible College. Blessing to meet some of the students here that I've been able to study with online, and now I'm known as Gina's dad. So you can skip all the future introductions. In the future, just say, "That's Gina's dad," and people will know who you're talking about. But we are so blessed and honored to be here with you and to spend this time with you. And if this morning, as we looked at in Bible class and our time together, some of the challenges that exist today in sharing the gospel with decline in Christianity in many parts of the world, including here, and rise of secularism, I want to share with you in today's time, this morning's time, a bit some of the positive trends that are actually happening for us to see that God is indeed alive and at work today, and that He is reaching people, and that people can and are being reached today. Here are some statistics to go through here, if I can get it to go. Yes, yeah. All right. First of all, faith, our religion as a whole, is outpacing non-faith, or those who are irreligious. So if you look globally around the world, it might seem like it's becoming more and more secular, more and more post everything, but actually, overall, people are becoming more religious, and faith is growing around the world. Christianity as a whole, all forms who identify in some way as Christian, continues to grow. Now 2.56 billion people. So we're not actually in decline. Christianity is actually on the uptrend. The growth that is happening in the fastest part of the world is in the global south. So Africa, Southern America, places like this where growth is fastest. Christianity continues to spread out around the world. And percentage of non-Christians who know a Christian is growing. So it used to be that if someone was not a Christian, that many of them weren't even in proximity to Christians. But now there is a much greater saturation of Christians geographically, and of course with the internet, that gap has been closed even further. So these hopefully are some positive trends that we can remember, that our God is alive and at work today, and that people today can indeed be reached for God. And I want to share with you some stories of some places around the world where we have seen at work in powerful ways, and to share with you some thoughts about this. And I would contend to you that really we're in the time of season that is much like the first century. That is, the time is ripe for the sharing of the gospel. In Galatians chapter 4, we see that Paul talks about the first century world, that when the time set had fully come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem people. So, why is it that God sent Jesus in the first century? I don't know fully. I mean, it seems like it'd be helpful if He sent it in the 21st century. We could have some great videos, hey, Jesus, could we get you on camera? We could do some cool stuff. But for whatever reason, God in His wisdom decided to send Jesus in the first century time. And I would contend to you, if that was a right time for God to send His Son into the world to redeem the world, I would say today is still a great time for redemption, and a great time for people to be reached for Jesus Christ, and perhaps a great time for something like the story of redemption. So we've been going through and talking about this evangelistic tool, discipleship tool, English learning tool, to share the gospel, short films that tell part of the biblical story with discussion questions, available in 60 different languages, a lot of different ways we can share the gospel, but this perhaps can be of help and blessing to you perhaps as well. So as we look at what God is doing around the world, we can see that actually that many of the conditions of the first century are here today, and perhaps some additional opportunities or additional ways of reaching out than even in the first century. So first of all, if we look today, a similarity between now and the first century is that we can connect with people anytime or anywhere, but in an even more dramatic fashion. So in the first century, one of the things that God seemed to have prepared the spread of the gospel with was the laying of the Roman roads all across the Roman Empire. And if you go across Europe and parts of it, you can see still the handiwork of the Romans. They were great, incredible master builders. Those roads, many of them still exist. I mean, it seems like we don't even build stuff like that to last anymore, but they built stuff to last. It's amazing. Well, that was of tremendous help for the spread of the gospel. Paul traveled along those roads. Those roads not only allowed transportation to happen more just physically, but also many of them were guarded by Roman soldiers, and so it just made transportation in general much easier. So the Roman roads allowed the connecting of people and the spread of the gospel. Well, today, what do we have? Well, we've got roads, transportation systems, but we also have another type of highway, and that's the information highway, the internet. And through the internet, we can be connected with people at any time, anywhere around the world. It is amazing the opportunities that this creates for us. So we see that in Scripture, God talks about how Jerusalem was at a very strategic point. He said that He placed Jerusalem at the center of the nations with countries all around. Well, there's some geographic truth to that. If you look on a map and you see that Israel is right in the nexus between Europe and Asia, and so it was a great crossing point. And perhaps there was strategic importance to this, why God chose Israel and placed her where He did. But certainly theologically, we know that Israel was at the center of the world as well, because the gospel would go out from Jerusalem and spread out around the world. Well, today, if you have internet access, you are in proximity to all kinds of people. You are actually at the center of the universe. I mean, during COVID, there were some terrible things that happened, obviously. But one of the things that did happen that was a positive is that people became more connected around the world. We started teaching online, and that opened up incredible opportunities. We saw that around the world. People that had never used Zoom before all of a sudden started Zooming because they wanted to, first of all, see their kids and grandkids. But that's opened up doors to have studies really with all kinds of people. One of the places where we've seen that happen in a powerful way is in Kenya. So we went as a family to Kenya back in 2018, and there you can see some pictures of our family. Here's Kaylee. She's a little bit taller these days, but we went there and served and made connections with ministry leaders and churches, etc. Someone that we met there was a wonderful young leader named Joel Njue, and if you saw our promo video this morning, our testimonial video, he talks about how in Kenya it's a digital generation. They need something like this to connect with them, and this is in Kenya. We don't think, oh, that's just in civilized, first country world. This is places all around the world. No matter where they are economically, socially, there are definitely places where they are looking for ways to connect in a technological way that is part of their world, and they welcome the use of tools and technology in order to be able to share the gospel. So we started sharing the story of redemption in their chapel there. They started showing it there. Then started setting up all these groups all across these campuses, and then multiple cities spreading out, doing online studies with people just like you, tuning in with people, teenage kids who are interested in learning, practicing English, interested in the gospel. They have all kinds of questions about God, about reincarnation, about all kinds of things. And God has blessed us. We've seen over the last 2 or 3 years more than 200 baptisms from this. So people just like you logging on with people around the world, in this case talking about people in Kenya, and so many people coming to faith. There's an older woman named Joan there, and just gone to a church, preached there, talked about the ministry, and I asked her what she was doing in the summer. She said, well, not much really. She said, no kids, no grandkids around here, and she seemed kind of sad. So I talked with her, and I said, we're going to be starting this new study. Someone from your church is going to be a part of that. We could use someone to be a part of this. And I said, if I sent you a Zoom link, do you think you could just log on? You could just click on that? She's like, yeah, I think I could do that. And she did. The first time she didn't have her camera on or sound, but we helped her with that. Someone helped her with that. And she joined these studies. And the next time I was out there and talking to her, she had this big smile on her face. She was like, I got to connect with these wonderful teenagers. It's like she had all this years of wisdom and knowledge and walk with the Lord and people who were eager to hear from her and to talk with her. And she smiled at them and prayed with them for them. And the preacher there said it's like she's a different person because she had someone to share the hope that she had and make a difference in their lives. And this is something that we can do. We are at the center of the universe. If we have internet access, we're at the center of the universe to be able to share the gospel with people around the world. And so we've been so overjoyed to see God at work in this part of the world. A second thing that we'd note about today that has some parallels with the first century is that we can communicate the gospel today in any language, so you may remember Star Trek Uhura. You know, she had that little translator thing. We are very, very close to having something exactly like that. It is almost instantaneous translation, and we have the opportunity to share the gospel in any kind of language. So in the first century, there was the gift of tongues. Today we have the gift of Google and AI and ChatGPT and all these kinds of things. I mean, it's really amazing the tools that God has given to us. And so language is not the barrier that it once was. And it's been pretty cool to see some things that we've been able to do with this. So one of the languages that we have our series is in Arabic. We have some work in Israel. Of course, we're filming there. I was doing online study with a woman there with one of our contacts. She decided she wanted to place faith in Christ. When we went there in person, again, summer before last, able to baptize her into Christ in the Jordan River, which is a really biblical baptism, right? And that was wonderful, incredible to see. Well, there's a camp there that is run, and we have some children's videos that are made with my youngest daughter, and one of them was made with my youngest daughter and one of the children's workers in Croatia. So we filmed this series that we showed there actually in Iceland, and then they translated and we put subtitles in it in Arabic. So, I mean, you could make this stuff up, like an English-speaking person with a Croat, filmed in Iceland, shown in Israel, translated into Arabic. And they said it worked great, and the kids loved it. So there's amazing opportunities that we have. Language does not have to be the barrier that it once was. If you have a heart, there are tools, there are ways to share the gospel today. Third similarity is that we can use some new emerging media today, like in the first century, to share the gospel. Now, whatever technology you grew up with is what you're usually comfortable with. You know, at some point, like flannel board was some newfangled technology, you know. We're just not really so sure about this flannel board stuff, you know. We need to go back to chalk, you know. Whatever you grew up with, that's what you're comfortable with. You're a little bit suspicious of anything else, right? Well, it's important for us to try to stay current because our kids, our grandkids, are growing up with different forms. And so ask their help in these media. But Paul talks about when he's in prison there, when you come, bring my cloak and my scrolls, especially my parchments. You know, scrolls and then books, all that. These are actually forms of media. And they've changed over time. And if you go and look at the copies of the New Testament, actually, in the first century, they started out with scrolls, then they became books, and then now we've got digital and all that kind of thing. So the point is that the gospel doesn't change, but the way that we communicate it, the media that we use, can and should stay current. So over in South America, it's been fascinating to me. Do you know the place that has downloaded and seen the chosen in their own language the most as a percentage of the population, most of any country? It's actually in Brazil, which shows both high tech skills as well as, I believe, high interest in the gospel and in Christianity. We're blessed. We have a wonderful woman named Maria, a young adult who's part of our team. She served with us as an intern, has stayed on, and does a great job. And so this is, again, different parts of the world where there's a high use of social media. Actually, in a lot of Latin America, there's a high percentage of use of that. So, again, some cool things. So we have some work in Albania, and including an outreach to the blind through a ministry there. and they minister to blind people. They come in each month, and they prepare a meal for them, spend time with them. And they wanted to use our series, but we had the series in Albanian subtitles. Well, that's not too helpful for people who are blind, right? So we were looking, and we have a number of our series in a number of different languages with voiceovers, but not all of them. So we didn't have someone to do an Albanian voiceover. So we used an AI tool that takes the subtitles that had actually been translated by humans, but took that, and it's kind of like a voice reader, and it makes an AI voiceover. And it's very interesting because it clones my voice. And so it sounds like I'm speaking Albanian or Arabic, which is really weird because I don't speak any of those languages. But is it perfect? No. But they were able to use it to share the gospel, and they said, yeah, it worked. We're here to have these conversations. And so, again, there's possibilities of sharing the gospel in so many different ways today. We can use these different forms of media. Number 4, we can still serve people as we share the gospel. So, as we talked about, a lot of different ways to serve people. Help them benevolently. For immigrants, many times helping fill out paperwork and government forms. I mean, as Americans, some of those government forms I struggle with, let alone if you don't speak that language. So there's all kinds of ways to serve people. You can also use our series to help people practice English, and we've seen a number of people do that. Here's our article in the Christian Chronicle about some older women in Virginia that learned how to use Zoom during the pandemic to start doing these studies, including with people over in Kenya. But there's a neat story of a woman named Juanita, and she studied with an au pair who was from Colombia. So someone who came into the church there in Virginia, and she started studying with her, helping her practice English using our series. But then she got a bit disconnected with her. It hadn't gone on for a while, so she calls the woman and thinks that she's calling the woman that she had been studying with, but she found out it was actually a different woman. And what had happened was the person who had hired the first au pair took the phone back from the first person when it was no longer employed and gave it to a second person. So she's actually calling a different person from the original woman, but she heard about what she was doing these studies to practice English. She said, well, I'd like to practice English. Could you study with me? And so she did. And she studied with her, and over the course of a number of months, she was baptized into Christ and became a follower of Jesus. Again, amazing opportunities for us. There are people who are open, willing, who are looking for help. If we'll serve, we'll be compassionate, we'll be that kind of Jesus community that y'all have talked about. God can do great things. And then number 5, we can travel most anywhere to share the gospel today in ways that are amazing. So in the first century, I kind of feel sorry for Paul sometimes, He's always getting on ships and getting in shipwrecks, and getting stoned and beat, all these different things. We have some challenges with transportation today. There's no doubt of that. But, we've got a lot of really great forms. So we've got cruise ships, we got planes, trains, automobiles, all of these different ways to go around the world and share the gospel. So if you want to, you've got missionaries in Chile, you can obviously go to Chile and serve with them. Whoever it is that you want to reach, there's a way to get there with giving, finances, and time, energy, and effort. For us, we spend a lot of on-the-ground time over in Europe, sharing the gospel, doing camps, equipping and training. In 2017, we went to 5 different countries as a family. They're doing work over in Europe. One of the places that we spent a lot of time at was in Croatia, and we continue to do that even during the pandemic. This is a picture of us going over in 2020 in the fall. We weren't able to come here in the spring, but there was one place in Europe that they allowed Americans to go during that time because no one wanted us during that time, but they allowed us to go to Croatia. This is a picture of the plane that we went over on, and it was kind of spooky. There were about 20 people on that plane. We were like 5 of 20. But of course, I got to lay out, and it made the jet lag a little bit easier because I got some good sleep on the plane. But point is that you can go many places around the world and share the gospel, and God creates incredible opportunities if we will go and make disciples. There is something about actually physically leaving your current place and depending upon God, getting in new situations. Jesus sent out the disciples 2 by 2 with the limited commission, and then he sent them out on the Great Commission. Well, we spend a lot of time, I said, over in Europe. This past summer, we went to Hungary for the first time. And, of course, we had all those jokes about being hungry and all that kind of stuff. So my daughters gave me a limit of number of times I could say something like that. But it was a great country. We went there, and we visited a missionary there named Curry. Met him and his son. And so spent a little time there. Well, went up to New York, and there was spending some time at the church there, meeting with their missions committee, preaching, etc. And afterwards, I met a young woman who was from Jordan, and she had been visiting there at that church. So she's from Jordan. I figured, well, she probably speaks Arabic, and she did. And so I pulled out my phone. I was like playing a little of the series in Arabic, and she thought that was pretty cool. And then started talking some more. How did you come here? She'd been worshiping at that church in Rochester, New York, Church of Christ there, for about 6 weeks. She said, well, her sister back in Hungary was attending a medical school there, and one of their fellow students shared Christ with her and baptized her into Christ. And she talked with her sister about this, and so she thought that was amazing. So she started looking for a church like that of her sister that she had started attending. And as we started talking, I began to put two and two together. I said, where was this? This is in Budapest. You said in a medical school in Budapest? Well, Curry, the missionary, his son is a medical student in Budapest. And I met a young woman that he had shared Christ with and led to faith and had baptized into Christ. And this woman was this woman's sister. I hadn't even planned to go to New York. I was like a substitute for one of our team members who couldn't go, etc. And now she's in an online study with other people that we've had the opportunity to share the gospel with and come to faith, an Arabic-speaking study. The point is that God's at work all around the world. And if we'll be faithful, if we'll go and we'll pray and we'll serve and we'll invite and share the gospel, God can and will do amazing things. He's doing it right now. He's doing it here with you, and He can do it even more. Thank you so much for who you are, for your heart for Christ, for sharing Him with others, for your faithfulness, for all the work and ministry that you do as a church, the colleges, the ministries that are represented here. We're blessed and honored to be a part here with you this weekend, and we hope to build a wonderful relationship with you, as together we can hopefully just encourage, partner together, find ways to share Christ together. Thank you so much for who you are and all that you do, and the time to be with you today. God bless.